Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you two working squid farm designs for Minecraft 1.13.1. During the 1.13.1 snapshots, I already talked about the changes to the squid spawning and showed a working design, which unfortunately got broken in the next snapshot. So back then we used waterlogged stairs as a spawning block for squids, but this got broken since squid no longer spawn in those blocks, since they now check for the collision box of the waterlogged blocks. The big change to squid spawning in Minecraft 1.13.1 is that squid no longer spawn in all biomes, they only spawn in river and ocean biomes. Of course, there's the question, which biome should I build my squid farm now? And in 99% of the cases, a river biome would be my recommendation. Right, why river biome? So the squid have really high spawning weight, and you also don't need to deal with any dolphins. There's still the issue you need to deal with salmon spawning in river biomes, but we can prevent this issue by using waterlogged blocks. Fish generally don't spawn in any waterlogged blocks. This is still the case, so that's why it would be ideal if you build a squid farm completely in waterlogged blocks, since you don't need to deal with the fishes. Also, all the information I gave in the snapshot video is still accurate, besides changes to the waterlogged blocks and the hitbox detection. So I talk a little bit more detail, which would be the preferred ocean biomes for squid farm and so on, and also give exact numbers how likely it is for squid to spawn in those biomes. Alright, so definitely recommend to watch the old video in case you want to know it in more detail, but focus on this video is the new farm. And yeah, we can see it over here. So instead of using waterlogged stairs, we're using waterlogged signs, since they don't have any collision box, and squid could easily spawn in there. Salmon cannot, so we don't need to deal with that. And also there's no dolphin spawning in a river biome. Alright, so around the waterlogged signs we have open fence gates, since they also don't have a collision box, and the squid that would spawn in those water columns would immediately start moving and then just fall out of the water columns and get killed by fall damage here at the bottom. And there's one more difference between the new farm and the one I showed in the snapshots, and that is that the distance to the player isn't as super important anymore. As you might know, mobs outside of 32 blocks from the player don't move anymore, but within 24 blocks they don't even spawn in the first place. That's why we had those spawning spaces here, but it's not as important with the new design. So what you can observe if the new squid are spawning is the first thing they do is moving, but what could still happen is if the first initial move keeps them inside of the water column, if they just maybe move up, then they won't move a second time. So yeah, very rare cases it could happen that a squid that is further away than 32 blocks from the player would stay in the farm, and you need to wait until that squid mob would despawn. This affected the other design a lot more because we had a 2x2 water column, but it's not as big of a deal with the 1x1 column because I think over 99% of the squid fall out anyway. So I was hoping that we maybe could see a squid mob that kind of doesn't move anymore. Definitely happened a few times already, but there's one. I think this one doesn't fall out. So basically need to now wait until it despawns. So the ideal squid farm would still operate within that magic range, but this is kind of hard to achieve for a decent size farm if you have to deal with the river biomes, obviously. So in total we're having 400 1x1 water columns in the squid spawning range from 46 to 62, and this is as tightly packed as possible. So you can't have any water diagonal from each other, because then it could just happen the squid swims into the next diagonal water block and doesn't fall down. Right, that's why we have the 1x1 squid spawning columns. And obviously you couldn't arrange a farm like this in a normal vanilla survival world, since obviously rivers aren't that wide, but it should be no problem to rearrange those water columns by just following the path of the river. Item collection would be either by a bunch of hoppers or use hopper minecarts in order to collect all the items. I set up a command block that keeps track how many squid mobs are existing in a world at the same time. This is a very important number when you need to decide how large you make a farm. So the goal is to keep the mob cap always filled, and you just need to provide as many spawning spaces as possible in order to reach that. And as you can see here, the mob cap isn't even filled all the time, maybe just 70 to 80% of the time. Mob cap is, by the way, 15 for water mobs. So the farm would definitely even benefit from more spawning spaces. But a farm of this size is already super efficient. You get 21,000 squid ink per hour with 400 water columns. If you maybe go for 600 or 800 water columns, maybe you get even 25 or 27,000 squid ink per hour. But you definitely get diminishing returns since no mobs keep spawning after you have 15. Alright, in case you want to go the opposite way and don't want to put in that much effort to build the farm, it's no problem to just go for a quarter of the size for 100 water columns, so make a 10 by 10, then you could still expect 5,000 to 6,000 squid ink per hour with perfect spawning conditions. Ideal spawning condition means there are no spawning spaces outside of your farm, but within 128 blocks range of the player. As you can see here, spawning spaces outside of your farm are a big issue because then you get mobs spawning outside of it, and it takes on average almost a minute until those mobs despawn. As you can see here, the squid farm came to a complete halt, and that's why you need to make sure that the only spawns that happen are within your farm. So in order to get those perfect spawning conditions in your vanilla Minecraft world, you basically need to drain some rivers around your farm. So that means you need to remove every single water block that is inside a river biome or an ocean biome, but outside of your farm, but within 128 blocks of the player's AFK spot. So like in any other mob farm, the AFK spot that would result in the lowest amount of spawning space removal outside of your farm would be above the farm. And in order to calculate the perfect coordinates, basically you need to take the center point of your farm, and then you go to the most extreme point where a squid could be, and then calculate the distance so you're no more than 128 blocks away from that space. Basic geometry. So this is design number 1. You need to place a lot of fence gates, which are quite expensive, and also open them afterwards. And you can't, by the way, you can't use flowing water, by the way. You need to use the waterlogged block, which is a source block, which would spread to the outside in case we wouldn't have those fence gates. So you need to build it like that, or do something similar like use signs. Alright, and since this is quite a lot of effort, I also want to show you a design which doesn't require as much effort, but is a bit slower. So this is a guardian-based design, also not a really new idea. The only interesting part is that you can make it work by using kelp. As you might know, guardians attack squid, and we can use it to our advantage in order to kill the squid. And we have the kelp blocks in order to get the waterlogged blocks in order to prevent the salmon spawning. So this would be a lot less work. You basically just need a fish tank, place some kelp at the bottom, wait until it's growing, and prepare the top area here. So we have a layer of signs in between to stop the kelp from growing, and on top we have a water stream in order to bring the items here. So you could place hoppers there in order to collect everything. I'm using about 10 guardians in there, so you could get them from an ocean monument, bring them over with a minecart or something similar. Don't forget to name them so they don't despawn. The size of this thing is 7 by 30 blocks, and there's really no point in making it larger, since the mob cap would be filled most of the time. And you could expect about 1500 squid ink power, which might be enough for a single player world, or even on a smaller server. We don't need a ton of resources. This is perfectly fine. And here's some additional information in case you want to build this. So coordinates, heights, etc. So the lowest waterlogged sign would be at Y45. Squid spawn between 46 and I think 63, but we go one block lower, so to Y45, since squids require a 2 high water in order to be able to spawn, so that's why I need additional water block at the bottom. And at the top we go up to Y62 in order to stay within the 4th subchunk. If you would go one block higher, this would reduce the spawning rates. Alright, so maybe how to build this or how I would do it, maybe you can find a more efficient way. So I would do it like this, place a fence gate at the bottom, and start placing eyes and just fence gates in a circle. Alternatively, if you don't have eyes, obviously you can also place water. And you can swim in the water and place the next blocks, obviously. Once you're done, you can easily stand on the highest fence gate and open them all. Alright, and then place the waterlogged signs in there. So in case you use full blocks, the killing floor would be at Y31. In case you want to use bottom slabs, Y32 would also be fine. Alright, now the Guardian farm. So it's pretty similar. The lowest kelp block would be at Y45 and the highest kelp block would be at Y60. Then we have the layer of waterlogged signs, and on top there's water. Water is also a daylight reducing block, so that's also important for the mob spawning algorithm and the subchunk count. So that's why the highest water block is at Y62. Alright, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks a lot for watching. See you next video. Bye bye.